Well, guess I would have to make this video because apparently some Sony fanboys are all mad at me and saying idiotically stupid things. Dave, look, the whole thing with me and Sony, and I want you to understand one thing, and I want everyone to understand. I don't hate Sony. It's just that this generation of consoles has been, well, bad, and Sony has completely fucked up. And to basically put it more into reflection, Sony is basically in some really deep financial trouble. And I mean some really bad financial trouble. Yeah, they may be a big corporation, but they are slowly starting to. They may end up selling even their Hollywood end. Of course, nothing is as bad as say like News Corp. You know, the whole cell phone hacking scandal. Now IGN is up for auction. Even though there are a legion of gamers who believe that it was IGN and their bullshit articles is the reason why nobody would buy IGN now. No, it's the cell phone hacking because IGN is owned by News Corp, and News Corp was pretty much dead center of the cell phone hacking scandal bit. So now News Corp has tried to sell IGN, nobody would buy it, and now they're auctioning the damn thing off. But the thing about Sony, um, do I think Sony is completely dead? Well, that's more of a yes and no sort of thing right now for me. Because the PS Vita is dead. And I think Sony's finally getting the message. As you heard, Sony is now releasing a PlayStation Store within Android. And there's even rumors that they're going to, well, not a PlayStation Store, but start releasing PlayStation games and old PlayStation games on iOS. And to me, that's confirmation that Sony knows that their PS Vita is dead in the water. And I think, and of course, there have been more and more rumors that Sony may end up just discontinuing the PS Vita, mainly due to financial reasons and the fact that they're too financially crushed to keep that thing going. And the way that they're, starting to go more towards Android and possibly iOS, I think Sony's about ready to throw in the white flag on this mess. And in a way, I think that's a good idea. I mean, yeah, the PS Vita, you can't do first-person shooters unless you're, looking through a screen. But the whole PS Vita is just a mess. And price dropping it isn't going to really help. I think they're just doing the price. They're thinking about price dropping it, maybe to see if they can get sales to increase. But there's a good chance that they can't. They just can't get it. But what really matters to me is what are they going to do with the PlayStation 4? Are they going to listen to batshit crazy people like Michael Pachter and not release a PlayStation 4 until 2014 or 15? Yeah, fuck no. Or at least I hope not. I hope Sony doesn't do this, because the Super Slim wasn't a bright idea. Yes, it's the cheaper, and I mean insanely cheaper made PlayStation 3. I mean, this thing is so cheap that some of the plastic can literally just fall apart right in your hands. Hell, you could just rip it out with your bare hands. Well, some of it, not all of it. And to tell you how cheap it is, I even got to see the new Super Slim in action, and yeah, the lid, it's just hollow plastic. And it just rotates left and right, and it's basically working on a simple spring system, not like in the old way of putting CDs. It's pretty much just like the old ways of the old consoles. You open up the lid and you pop it in there. It's kind of weird that Sony went into this weird cheap ass direction. I mean, on tops of Wii U, this thing looks more cheaply made than the Wii U does, or even the Wii, or even the PlayStation 2. And by the way, I love the PlayStation 2. Sorry, hiccups. But the PlayStation 2 has been one of the best consoles out there, and I think it finally stopped selling about last year. Yeah, it's been around for a while, longer than any other console of the last generation, and or the generation before the last, or whatever. I mean, GameCube and the original Xbox didn't last that long. Well, there was one other console, and that was the Super NES, especially when they came out with a second model to their Super NES called the Model 2, or what some would call the Junior, the Super NES Junior. And it was being sold right about the same time the Nintendo 64 was pretty much out. But what really matters is basically the PlayStation 4. If it doesn't come out in 2013 and comes out in 2014, that's a mild disappointment. But the major thing I hope they do, is that they don't concentrate so much on my CPU power, but more on GPU power. Well, not extensively more. Just get, somewhat of a good, powerful GPU. But the most important thing is the price points, because let's face it, the Sony's $600 console on launch wasn't exactly the best idea. And I think Sony's plan to try to make the PlayStation 3 take the place of PlayStation 2 when they roll out their PlayStation 4 isn't going to work. Because the PlayStation 3 just doesn't. It's not as ambiguous as what the PlayStation 2 was. I mean, the PlayStation 2 was everywhere. And the PlayStation 2, I hate to say this, kicks the PlayStation 3's ass. Not in graphics power, but in popularity, ubiquity, and all this. Nothing stood in the PlayStation 2's face. I mean, Sony was rocking the PlayStation 2 better than anybody back then. But with the PlayStation 3, it just isn't there. The ubiquity, the need, and to add in more and more functionalities to it. I think as soon as the PlayStation 4 comes out, developers are just going to drop the PlayStation 3 outright. And if they come up with the PlayStation 3 to at least a good $300 or even $400, then there's a good chance that they could even kick Nintendo's ass. Yeah, I said it. I mean, yeah, I've been, saying good things about Nintendo, but I only say that because, well, a bunch of batshit crazy people have been saying batshit crazy things about Nintendo. And most of which wasn't even true or just put on unfounded information. I mean, here's the secret. I don't care for the giant extra touchscreen that Nintendo's putting on there. I think Nintendo would have done better if they just taken out the big touchscreen controller and left Pro controllers on there. And maybe a somewhat better GPU, but still, it looks like a good, solid console, and it's at a good, solid price, so I am going to get me a Wii U. But if Sony does the same with their PS4, I will get it. I will praise Sony for this, because this is what I want from Sony. All I want is a decent console. I don't care about graphic power. That's at a good price range from when it launches, and I will sing every praise to Sony in every which possible fucking way. And right now, the PlayStation 3 just isn't it. Mainly because their third-party support is shit. Why? Because all their third-party games were just ported from the Xbox 360 and then thrown into the fucking PS3. Hardly any of their three-party supports actually worked on making really good ports for the PlayStation 3. I mean, half the third-party games that were, well, non-exclusives look like shit on the PlayStation 3. If you wanted to play the games that actually looked good, you had to get the Xbox 360 version. Because that's where the developers went. They all went straight to Xbox 360. Of course, in the last gen, most of the developers were in the Nintendo GameCube. Well, no, there was a lot of developers who were pretty much in the PlayStation 2 as well. But if you still think, but those PlayStation 3s are cheap now, I can go get them. Just remember, those third-party games that were, multi-consoles, mostly look like shit, and a good part of them still look like shit, because they were all just ports from the Xbox 360 and just ported over to PS3. Now, if they make a good, reasonable console, reasonable graphics, and a reasonable price with their PlayStation 4, there's a good chance they'll get better ports and better games, and a better library. And I'm sorry, Uncharted is not enough to make me want to go get PlayStation 3s. I mean, yes, it's a good game, but it's not enough to convince me to go get a console that has shitty third-party ports. It's just not. But I do hope Sony's learned their lesson, and I do hope the PlayStation 4 is better than what the PlayStation 3 has been. And I hope they've learned from their mistakes. If not, I don't think Sony's going to be around, and I don't think there will be even a PlayStation 5. I think it will be over for Sony. They'll be out of the console business for good if they go the same direct route they did with the PlayStation 3. Well, that's all I have to say.